And we have joining us in the studio this morning to clear the air and some of the issues raised concerning this judgment is the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. Sir, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
Okay, Honorable Minister, a pleasure to have you with us on the program. We've listened to the background report that was taken, of course, from the press conference at which you were present, and you also had your brother, Minister of Justice, and indeed the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget, National Planning, plus the Central Bank Governor. The whole issue would, on the face of it, seem so surreal. What is happening? Is this some movie that is playing out, or is some reality that Nigeria is faced with?
I wish it were a movie, but it's actually a very serious matter. Like I tried to reconstruct at my press conference on Tuesday, 27th of August in Abuja here. The contract for the gas supply was purportedly entered into in 2010 between the Process and Industrial Development, an Irish company, and the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources. But ab initio, it was a contract that was not meant to be. Because in the first instance, the contracting parties are very strange. If you want a contract to supply gas, you should have as party those who own the gas. The Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources does not own any gas. The gas is owned by the IOCs, NNPC, and others. So ab initio, you can see the intent was less than honest. And unfortunately, some local actors, both from within the system and outside the system, have been fingered to have collaborated with local and international actors to defraud Nigeria. And this becomes even more evident in the sense that P&ID claim to have invested $40 million in the project. But Central Bank of Nigeria says there's no record of any importation of any money from P&ID. Now, they went to arbitration. And on the, I think, January 2017, the arbitration panel awarded $6.597 billion against Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources. And of course, that is Nigeria. And attempts were made immediately by P&ID to enforce that award. Of course, on the part of the federal government, we engaged the company to see whether there could be an amicable solution, because we looked at the equity of it. It did not bring in any penny into this project. And when you look at the final award, because by the time the final was given on August 16th, if I remember, it has ballooned to $9.6 billion. It's unprecedented. I mean, our experts all over the world have agreed that this is unjustifiable, it's exorbitant, it's unreasonable, and that it does not even reflect any attempt to protect the commercial interest of P&ID. If anything, it's just simply punitive on a gargantuan scale to inflict economic injury into on Nigeria and its people. And this is why the federal government is doing everything possible, first, to ask for a stay of execution, at the same time, ask to set aside the award. Meanwhile, on the home front, the federal government is set up, has directed both the EFCC, the NIA, and the IGP to actually find out those who are the main actors that have put this country in this sorry state. It's quite unfortunate because it's one thing for you to actually breach a contract if you have entered into a contract, so to say, if the other party has performed. But for you to be slammed with a $9.6 billion US, fine, when the injury suffered by the other party cannot be quantified. And you see, arbitration is supposed to be restitution. It's supposed to restitute. It's not supposed to give you what would have made you over 20 years.
Yes, yeah.
And this is why we are leaving no stone unturned to ensure that this judgment is set aside. And again, I want to take the opportunity to assure Nigerians that there's absolutely no imminent threat to seizure for assets, because even the UK court said that they cannot begin any attachment until the courts are back and there will be further hearing on the matter. So the federal government is taking every opportunity to ensure that our Commonwealth is not.
Honorable Minister, I'm just thinking, from what you have explained, it does seem that there are problems at the very beginning, at the incipient of the contract agreement with this company. Because, as you rightly pointed out to you, there are Nigerian players in this. No company can come to Nigeria without having, domestic backing here. And from what we read, that Nigeria was supposed to supply 400 cubic feet of gas within the period of 20 years, and that Nigeria reneged in its obligations. Now, many Nigerians will wonder, what was also the obligation of the company in the first place? Because you were talking about what their own input in the first instance. How much did they bring in the project? And that calls for so many questions, Honorable Minister. Was Nigeria in any way represented, during the arbitration? Were we there at that point in time to defend the nation? And if some of these issues were raised at the arbitration, one is believing that perhaps the judgment would have come so hard on Nigeria if we were effectively represented at the arbitration level. Were we there to defend ourselves?
Ezekiel, like you rightly said, the entire contract was bizarre, still bizarre. In the sense that a company comes and says he wants a gas contract, and he enters a contract with the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources. They're not custodian of our gas, to start with. Two, we must please remind Nigerians that this contract was entered into in 2010. 5 clear years before this transition came in. But we accept responsibility because, governance has to continue, no doubt. Now, you raised the other issue, whether Nigeria was representing the arbitration. Of course, yes. The records available to me, there were 3, arbitrators. One, which is the practice, would be nominated by the one party, the other by the other party, and the 2 of them will agree on the third arbiter. So yes, Nigeria was represented on the arbitration by the former Attorney General of the Federation, Chief Ojo, SAN. So it's not true that we did not defend it or were not represented. And even immediately after the award, we went into negotiation with the process and industrial development. So all these accusations that the federal government did nothing, absolutely not true. We did. And immediately the P&ID made attempt simultaneously both in the UK and the US to enforce the award. We also engaged solicitors. And in the US, we succeeded, at least partially in the US, and we are still there now, trying to defend, the patrimony of Nigeria. So it is not correct, and it's very unfair to say the federal government did nothing, that they were neither at the arbitration, nor they did do anything after the arbitration. No. We did all that, we ought to do.
Yeah, well, we will return to how Nigeria tried to pursue this case or defend its interest. But again, I had asked the question earlier, whether this is a movie or not, whether it is a piece of fiction. And my colleague Kieran has also raised that aspect in a sense. What do we know of the promoters of P&ID at this stage, or as at January 2010, when they entered into this purported agreement with the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources?
Kieran, like I said again, Kingsley, this agreement was entered into in 2010. Precisely in January 2010, under the administration of late Yaradua. And we also begin to wonder, was there due diligence? And this is exactly where where Mr. President Muhammad Buhari has, directed the EFCC, the IGP, the NIA, to actually look at the circumstances and unravel what led to this kind of contract that has become a nightmare for all of us. Who were the actors? What role did they play? Past and present actors. Because it's clear there was collaboration, of course, and collusion between local players in and outside of government and, international collaborators to inflict on Nigeria this economic injury. Because it does not make sense. In the first instance, like I said, who are the contracting parties? This is the first time Nigeria is going to enter into a gas contract or a refinery contract. You can't enter into a contract with somebody who does not own the product you want to refine. Plus, this company came, to me it's like a portfolio company, a briefcase company, came in, signed this agreement, and the next thing we had was that they accused Nigeria of breach.
See, Honorable Mr. C, it's laughable for those who,
it's laughable. It's a nightmare, but it's nightmare.
Breach of what now?
I precisely.
You don't know, I don't know.
Like I said,
why this is pertinent, Honorable Mr. Yes, is because there are already insinuations that there are some anomalies and discrepancies, in the process of awarding this contract, right? And that is why what Honorable Mr. said is very important as well, that the local partners would have to be fished out, for them to make it clear to Nigerians their own role in this agreement.
That's why I asked about the promoters. Who are the promoters of P&ID?
Most commentators have been very grossly unfair to this administration. Number one, the contract was signed in 2010. Arbitration started in 2013. Award was given in 2017. And the moment we were seized of this matter, we immediately entered and took all precautions to ensure that we didn't get to this stage. Two, you see, it's quite disturbing the way Nigerians are commenting on this issue. They forgot that this is not about any particular administration. It's about Nigeria. $9.6 billion translates to about 3 trillion naira.
3.7.
And that is 20% of our foreign reserves. Now, imagine what is going to happen if $9.6 billion of our assets are attached. It's going to affect every Nigerian, and that is why we appeal to the sense of patriotism and objectivity of the media in handling this very, very delicate matter. It's an existential, threat to Nigeria. But I want to assure Nigerians that we, as a government, would take every step, legal, diplomatic, and otherwise, to ensure that we do not allow this kind of, what I call it, it's just a haste of our Commonwealth to take place.
I'm wondering, again, let's begin to break it down to the extent that we can on the basis of information that is available. The so-called agreement wasn't going to be the first contract that the Nigerian government or agencies of the Nigerian government were entering into with other parties. Look, we have the LNG project. So LNG is there. There's a framework for that. The IOCs are involved. The IOCs are co-owners of the LNG project. And then you also have NAPIMS, which is the investment arm of the NOC, which is the national oil company. Okay, Honorable Minister, please just try and explain this to us. I know that you are not P&ID. They said Nigeria was to construct pipelines, supply gas. Was the Nigerian Ministry of Petroleum Resources now supposed to build the pipelines and supply the gas to an empty station? Did they turn a sword? Did they start constructing either the gas refining or whatever plant at Odukman?
What is the damage?
Honestly, I am as perturbed as you are, and I'm dazed as you are. Honestly, because one begins to wonder what was going through the minds of those who have paid their signature to this contract in 2010. When they are aware of what even laymen are talking, when I say laymen, people who are not even in industry are talking about. You can't give what you don't have. Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources does not own any gas. The gas is owned either by the international oil companies, the NNPC, or the other subsidiaries of NNPC that are involved in gas exploitation and exploration.
And they have licenses and leases.
So this was a contract that was just entered into clearly with an agenda, which is to fleece Nigeria. But they couldn't have gotten up with it if there had not been, internal conspirators.
Yes.
This is true of the matter. This is true of the matter. Honestly, the more you look at it, the more angry you become. But it's not about anger. It's about finding a solution to it.
That's right.
Yes.
And in all of this, as some commentators have actually said that even the award, of 9.6 billion is unreasonable and manifestly excessive in the first instance. What kind of award they'll have a 7% increase annually to have the kind of money we're talking about? And again, the central bank governor indicated that look, this group of people are ambushing, the nation's treasury, and that cannot be allowed to happen. Now, Honorable Minister, what are the present measures now being taken by government to address this?
Well, legally, the federal government has engaged very competent lawyers, both in the UK and the US. First, since the enforcement judgment is in the UK we are working very hard first to get a safe execution and also subsequently to get the award to be set aside, because we believe it's manifestly, unjust, it's unreasonable. It goes beyond protecting the commercial interests of P&ID. It's like just like why a commentator said that if any company gets this kind of award, it needs not to work again forever. It can close shop. And if you want to understand how Nigeria got to this solid state of our economy, it's contracts like this that led us to where we are today. And that's why the government, while we are taking actions to ensure that our assets are not endangered, we are also making sure that those who are responsible for this do not go scot-free.
Well, what you have said also could be in tandem with some of the propositions by some other observers. Is it possible that these were just not just now, these were economic hitmen? Economic hitmen. Coming so soon, or just only a few years after Nigeria got debt relief. If you recall, as you said, agreements of this nature, debts that we took, left, right, and center, that got us into a debt trap for so many years. And then we got debt relief, and within a few years later, because of course the agreement was signed in January 2010, but there had been negotiations, so-called negotiations, with this company that says on its website frequently asked questions that it has done some projects in Nigeria, but those projects are not mentioned. So could it, I don't know. I mean, it's a very challenging conversation to have, because the more you seek to ask the questions, the more bizarre it all seems. Were we caught off guard or something?
Kingsley's one thing is very clear. There was no honest intention whatsoever in this contract. Both local players and international players were out to fleece Nigeria. It's very clear. And how the government in 2010 failed to see this is what baffles everybody. How could they have committed Nigeria to some contract? And again, I think this also taught us a lot of lessons. For instance, we should now start looking at how in future contracts involving Nigeria and at this kind of scale and level with arbitration clauses, whether we should not start insisting on domiciling the arbitration in Nigeria. Because there's a lot also about what we call the arbitration economy.
That's right.
See, if the arbitration clause domiciles the arbitration in Nigeria, it then means that the arbitrators will come from all over the world to Nigeria. That way, they will develop the capacity also of our own lawyers. At the same time, rather than we spending money in going abroad, to defend our cases, would stay at home and do so. Because I've not seen yet, I might be wrong, whether any foreign company has come to do its arbitration in Nigeria. So I think this has also taught a lot of lessons, and I think both the NBA, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Ministry of Justice, we should now start thinking in future whether we should not be domiciliating our arbitration.
Yes. Let's look as contractors. That's the place of the contract.
You have a legal background, but let me read out this. The award was handed by a tribunal constituted under the rules of the Arbitration Act of 1996. All right. England and Wales, and the Nigerian Arbitration and the Coalition Act of 2004.
Yes.
Now, the question is why didn't this arbitration originate from the country of the agreement?
That's precisely.
That's
Sorry,
so,
Honorable Minister.
are we
That's
obligated,
what I'm
and
saying.
are we obligated
You
to
see,
now, respond?
We have a Lagos Court of Arbitration, for instance. And there's no reason why we cannot have another arbitration court in Abuja, for instance. Well, that's why I'm saying that probably in future and thinking forward, we should probably insist as much as possible that when it is going to be an arbitration clause, let it be domiciled in Nigeria. That's my point. I would throw this open to both the NBA, Ministry of Justice, Chamber of Commerce, because there's what is called an arbitration economy. I mean, everywhere in the world. And why can't we benefit? Why should we be supporting other economies on contracts that emanate from Nigeria? I think these are issues that we know.
Kyria, and part of what the Honourable Minister said earlier was to say that there's the implication that the clause in that agreement indicated that the place of arbitration will be in the UK.
But how could someone...
And see, don't forget too that the federal government actually challenged the award in the Federal High Court.
In Lagos.
In Lagos. It was ignored by the UK court. So those people who have been saying that federal government did nothing have actually not been fair to the federal government. Every step along the line, federal government took steps to ensure that this kind of nightmare does not arise.
But Honourable Minister, the previous administration, the administration before 2015, right, because we learned that the first award came, and after 5 years, there was no appeal by Nigerian government, perhaps before the advent of this administration. So because of the delay in Nigerian government appealing, led to the second award by the British court.
I am not aware of that. What I know is that the contract was signed in 2010. They went to arbitration in 2013. In January 2017, and the arbitration gave an award against Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources for $6.597 billion. And immediately, the federal government engaged P&ID to see whether we can settle. So all those people who are, I've given you the dates. Contract was signed in 2010, they went to arbitration in 2013, even before we came in. 2017, award was given. We entered into negotiation immediately. It did not yield anything. 2019, they went for enforcement. So where is the 5 years that they are alleging that we did nothing?
No, well, again, we're speaking almost ex nihilo now, because Honourable Minister, see, the contract was entered into in 2010,
yes,
January
yes,
2010.
Yes.
One will assume that there are timelines, or there were timelines in the agreement. At such and such a time, Party A would do, let's assume Kyria is P&ID, it's the judgment creditor now. It would perform so much of its own side. Federal government would perform so much of its own side, as it were, or Ministry of Petroleum Resources. When did the breach occur? What had P&ID done to say that, by 2 years later, I say, okay, there has been a breach? What is on, as Nigerians would say, what is on ground, to show that they have made either part performance of their contract or full performance of their contract?
In fact, before the minister comes in, I read a text on this matter, where they said Nigeria was supposed to be supplying 400 cubic feet. That was where it ended. He said that Nigeria reneged. I was now wondering, was there any part of their own contribution which they did not renege on, that Nigeria did, as to now accuse Nigeria of ensuring that the project did not, because they are saying that the project failed because of Nigeria's inability to fulfill its own part of the agreement. And it has not been made specific.
Kyria, I asked that question earlier.
And I answered.
Yes. Sorry, Honourable Minister,
yes.
I asked the question earlier. Look, you construct pipelines.
Yes.
All right? And then you have your gas gathering fields. And when you gather the gas, you now pipe the gas to where they are supposed to process. the process. So
Was there any processing plant?
That's the question I'm asking you.
We are saying that, to the best of our knowledge, this company did not invest 1 penny in Nigeria. Central Bank governor said it publicly that there's a procedure when a foreign company is bringing funds into Nigeria to invest. There are forms to fill. There are records. And you state what you want to do with it. Now, there's no record that P&ID brought in 1 penny into Nigeria for this project. We do not see anywhere where is any activity was conducted or undertaken by P&ID before they now claim that the contract was breached and rushed to arbitration. There are many questions
this is a
to
movie.
be answered. And it's a nice. I wish it was a movie.
We wish
It's
it
a
were a
very
movie,
serious
yes.
matter. Now, that's why I think that the investigations being conducted by the FCC, NIA, and IG will actually unravel many things.
Exactly.
And Nigerians will begin to see who are really the true enemies of Nigeria. They begin to see who collaborated with this, foreign company. To the extent that today, 1/5 of our total foreign reserve is being threatened. It's a very, very serious issue.
Because I'm wondering, Mr. Why I asked you whether Nigeria was represented at the arbitration was this point you made now. They didn't bring in a penny. They don't have any infrastructure in Nigeria established preparatory to be part of the agreement. And a court of law gave the judgment. So if we were represented, why weren't these facts, laid bare before the court?
I'm told that under the arbitration law, this particular one is that Nigeria would nominate an arbitrator. P&ID will nominate one. The two of them will jointly agree on the third arbitrator. And that was done. But how they are now agreed, how they arrived at this kind of punitive award beats one's imagination, because it's a world record. It does not, it goes beyond just compensating P&ID, because I don't go to an arbitration, you tell them this is what I've lost. We do not see what they've lost. This is a 20-year gas contract.
We have not even reached half mark.
We have not even started.
Half mark, even if say 10 years.
So this is why we are very confident that we will succeed.
I'm wondering, still looking at the link, say there's a breach of a contract. It's not as if there is frustration. In other words, it's assuming, some persons will raise this question, okay, you were supposed to have done X, Y, Z, you didn't do that, and so on and so forth, but can the contract be revived? If a contract is frustrated, it's a different, it might be a different consideration.
You see, Kingsley, I think if a company, ab initio, had an agenda, it's more profitable for him to go to arbitration, because something will come out of the arbitration and he has invested nothing. So whatever comes out of the arbitration is a profit for him. This is the way I look at it. But I think we should just allow our lawyers to go ahead with the filings, and but we want to assure Nigerians that the federal government would not sleep until this matter is resolved in a manner that will not injure the interests of Nigeria or Nigerians.
And it's also important to bring in the actors in the Ministry of Petroleum Resources at that point in time, those persons who are directly involved in the negotiation of this contract. Because if you ask me and many Nigerians, one would say that, look, that was supposed to be a scam, so to speak. It's a contract scam. and those involved, they should be made to actually not just to face the law, but to explain to Nigerians their level of involvement in this. Because from all indications, Honorable Minister, for all you've told us and our available records from the CBN, you know, it shows that there was no deal in the first place. There was no concrete deal, you know, in terms of deals backed by law, you know, deals backed by all other necessary actions to be taken before such a huge contract is awarded.
You see, Kyria, one thing is clear. Without insider collaboration, we would not have reached this solid pass. Clearly, the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources had enough competent, experienced personnel to know that this kind of contract cannot be entered into without involving NNPC, without involving the IOC. So that is why until this investigation is completed and concluded, we would not be able to know exactly what happened. But on the surface, I think it was a sham, ab initio, and the actors knew where they were going.
Well, that is the case you have repeated, Honorable Minister, and some commentators will also, most respectfully, review the decision by the UK High Court judge and wonder how His Lordship arrived at the punitive figures that have now been imposed on Nigeria. I mean, you're just wondering what's going on in the judiciary in the UK.
What they worked out is they worked out to say the initial one is 6.5 billion,
whatever,
and
now,
then there's a 7% increase annually.
Between
So then and now.
That's between 2010 and now.
And now that gave 9.6.
And like I said, number one, arbitrations are also supposed to be restitutional, to restitute you and bring you back to the position you were. There will be no loss. Now, what does $9.6 billion represent? Is it their investment? Or is it the anticipated profit in 20 years?
Yeah, that's what it is, from what I...
No, but we have done only 9 years out of the 20 years.
Honestly, these are issues that I'm sure will be canvassed, very vigorously, both at the level of, asking for self-execution, level of, asking for the setting aside of this, very unfair award. But like I keep saying, this award is unreasonable, goes far beyond protecting the commercial interests of P&ID. It is exorbitant. It's not justifiable.
Well, all right,
yeah, we'll have some. I just, when I was talking about the disposition of His Lordship at the UK High Court, London High Court, one will wonder how the great Lord Denning, Master of the Rolls, might have viewed a case of this nature.
The one Justice Butcher was...
Hey, it's Justice Butcher that gave the sentence, but Lord Denning, the Master of the Rolls, how might he have viewed a matter of this nature? I mean, you're trying to...
All right, 32 weeks now, let's also see what Nigerians are thinking. From Akeju Olabaju, say the role of public officers in this kind of deal and other similar deals are suspicious. How do we explain how a joint venture translated to award of contract, and when it derailed, you submitted the arbitration clause for determination outside the jurisdiction?
Now, Festus Akimboyewa has this to it. Government at all levels in Nigeria should examine the terms and conditions of all contracts they sign with foreign companies so as not to fall into this trap again. Henceforth, any arbitration clause in contracts we sign with foreign companies must be tailored to reflect our laws. That's part of what the Honorable Minister has said. And certainly, there are lapses in the way this matter was handled since 2010. Federal government must file the appeal and stay of execution of the judgment against the country.
And now Abdul says the present government, though not the cause, should do everything possible to reverse the situation. Nigeria must appeal the judgment immediately, investigate and prosecute all those involved. Corruption must have played a role in the whole issue.
About Wala Babs, the federal government must go after everyone that's been a part of this shady deal. The EFCC, ICPC, and others have prominent roles to play. The country can't afford to lose such a huge sum at this crucial time in our national life. Government must review the case and, if bad enough, should negotiate for reduction. How did we get here? It's simple. Many of those who sat in positions of authority in the past were, in its words, just wicked. They were only interested in what accrued to them, not about the entire country. These persons practically threw us under the bus.
Use the word Donald Trump. You went about it. Okay, from Titus Monday, New York, he said, wow, evil forces at work. Some people are just bent on seeing this country on its knees. Key actors in the contract should be fished out and made to account of what happened.
Mike Ayakwo, the judgment dealt against Nigeria is unfortunate, and it firmly represents one of the many misdemeanors. This is more than a misdemeanor. Misdemeanor is, this is almost, some would say almost felonious, that put us in our present predicament. How can a nation move forward with this? The step taken by President Buhari is a welcome development. Persons found to have been involved in this heinous, wicked, and unforgivable crime against the nation must face appropriate sanctions, no matter their positions in society. Anything short of this will be unacceptable. We must call a spade a spade.
All right, now from Jack Solomon, that's a different view altogether. So the big question is why Nigeria's refusal to enter appeal for over 5 years since the ruling was given. Can we boastfully say we are responsible for this huge sum awarded because of our nonchalant attitude in attending to pertinent...
I'm afraid, curious. You see, this is a kind of misinformation that is being sponsored by P&ID. P&ID has engaged some Nigerians to do their dirty job for them. Now, like I gave you the timeline, contract was entered into 2010. It went to arbitration 2013. The interim award was given 2017. Where is the 5 years that we didn't appeal? And immediately the award was given, federal government engaged with his lawyers, P&ID, to see how we could, arrive at an amicable solution. Was frustrated.
I think what the person was saying that in 2013, when the award first came, we had 14, 15, 16, 17, this is 4 years.
That's arbitration.
Okay.
That's arbitration. 2013 arbitration started, Nigeria was represented. So where is the 4 or 5 years that we did nothing?
Well,
it's kind of disinformation.
You say that some persons probably have been engaged to push the position of P&ID. Part of what is also available in the information space is the claim by P&ID that, look, it came as a do-gooder, that it was supposed to help, process this gas and then boost gas supply to the Gencos, and then help Nigeria's 180 million people have electricity that was supposed to generate 3,000 megawatts.
If I've been awarded the $9.6 billion damages for doing nothing, I can employ the most expensive PR consultants in the world to spread this kind of story. This is what is happening. But unfortunately, even the Nigerians who are being employed and being engaged, they fail to realize that in the unlikely event that we lose 20% of our foreign reserves, they will also be affected.
Exactly.
There are examples in other parts of the world that when issues come like this, you should be very patriotic.
You see, Honorable Minister, I raised the question earlier, and then you've also addressed it. The question of economic hitmen. They manifest in different forms. Why is it that almost at all times, the quantum of Nigeria's foreign reserves is of interest to a certain... We know that, it is useful in terms of your import capacity, your capacity to pay your imports and then back up your credit and so on and so forth. But it just looks like portfolio presence or portfolio carriers around the world keep targeting Nigeria's foreign reserves to see what they can download from it and then take off. What is happening to us?
Kingsley, without internal collaborators, external conspirators will never succeed. I think we must admit that. There's something wrong with us in Nigeria. The people in the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources in 2010, they were not British, they were Nigerians. And this is why we must get to the root of this problem. We must find out those who are there and the role everybody played, either inside government or outside government.
Yeah, Honorable Minister, honestly, I don't envy you and some of you who are in government, facing this kind of situation. And to make it worse, it's not taking place in Nigeria. It's not taking place in Nigeria. Yes. We have to go out of the country to face the music. But what also worries many is the fact that the first was in the U.S., in Washington, D.C.
So we are still, as a matter of fact, they are also asking for enforcement in the U.S. And we've engaged lawyers in the U.S. to fight that one, to challenge that also. Because, honestly, like I say, the whole thing is very unfortunate. It's a nightmare. And we just need to do two things. One, locally, find out and fish out those who are responsible for this. But more importantly, take all steps, legal, diplomatic, whatsoever, to ensure that this kind of, haste, because it's haste, it's just like daylight robbery.
Exactly.
Which, if allowed to take place, will have such, drastic effect on the
economy and even on the nation's
on the life of
policy.
everybody.
Exactly.
So that is the task before us now.
All right, you are watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be, of course, concluding this edition of the program. For now, stay tuned.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have with us the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, and we are discussing with him the $9.6 billion judgment debt that has been awarded in favor of Process and Industrial Developments Limited on account of an agreement entered into with the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources in January 2010. A number of issues have come up. Our viewers have also expressed their positions on this issue. Kirian, we have a second set of tweets.
Yes, okay, let me start. That's Badamasi Adamu. This is servitude. The move by President Buhari on the issue is commendable. The internal and external conspirators should be identified and punished severely to serve as deterrent to others.
Now, Danladi Ndayebo tweets, I do not believe that the P&ID case is hopeless for Nigeria. My advice to the federal government is to call the owners of P&ID for a meeting and quietly resolve the issue. $9 billion, it should be $9.6 billion is so huge and therefore unrealistic to expect Nigeria to pay. Reconciliation is the way to go.
All right, Festus Akimboewa.
It's Francis Obi, I believe.
Is it Francis Obi?
Yes.
Right, all right, yes. I will advise that a proper investigation be made to avoid a situation where someone signed secretly for Nigeria without going through the normal process.
Festus Akimboewa has this perspective that the concern is the precedent that this might set, because other foreign companies may then take advantage of the judgment to sue Nigeria. And since arbitration clauses do not prevent criminal enforcement, action must be taken against the company if found to be involved in any criminal activity in Nigeria.
Now, Dilejak Solomon says, at this time that the federal government is trying to reposition our imbalanced economy, Nigeria cannot afford to lose a huge sum amounting to 9.6 billion to anyone because of an aborted contract award. The government should persistently appealed the decision, even though we know P&ID is committed to vigorously enforcing its rights. The money awarded by the England court is manifestly too enormous. It's also pertinent that the government or political office holders stop awarding contract that we don't have financial capacity to execute.
Cecilia Okoroma, now those involved in this contract scam should be prosecuted. Local contractors are usually worst hit by such breaches.
Akeju Alabaju, the U.S. court ruling of 18 November 2018 ruled in favor of Nigeria, who is a respondent, and no appeal. But P&ID rushed to UK as far as this is concerned. Nigeria owed nothing and should be seen not to pay a dime in any circumstance, and nothing was put on ground that warranted any payment.
Okay, well, those are the tweets that we'll take in the meantime. Let's return to some of the wider lessons that we ought to learn from this. Some of the tweets I've already spoken to that, and you have also touched on it, that henceforth we should be mindful of the arbitration clauses and the kinds of agreements that we enter into. There is also a related issue here. Of course, this is more of the remit of your counterpart in foreign affairs and, say, national planning. It appears that Nigeria tends to enter into all manner of agreements. And do we have a refinery, for draft agreements for Nigeria to process and get to understand the implications before appending its signature? We saw what happened with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that took quite a while, because the President Buhari said, no, hold on a minute, let's know precisely what is in this. And he got all stakeholders, and once it was clear and that, look, we needed to shift our position and that we will be key beneficiaries from this, okay, proceed and sign. But there have been all kinds of concerns. I mean, 1995 or thereabout, Nigeria was one of the early signatories to the WTO agreement, World Trade Organization, and after a while we found out, that our economy was worse for it. What are we likely to do to ensure that, look, the kind of agreements we get into that also raise the issue of financial subscriptions and therefore obligations that can also be a leakage on our resources? What is going to be government's disposition to this?
You see, Kingsley, I think it all has to do with leadership. We have one of the finest lawyers in our Ministry of Justice and one of the most patriotic lawyers in our Ministry of Justice. But some of these decisions, most of them were actually political decisions. And it was not unusual to even see the Ministry of Justice overruled sometimes. Because people have political interest, they have in economic selfish interest. Like you rightly pointed out, before we signed the African Continental, free trade, Mr. President ensured that all stakeholders were carried along. Many people were impatient. They were asking us, join the bandwagon, join the bandwagon. Now we have seen now that we were careful to ensure that we didn't rush into it so that it would not affect local manufacturers, it would not affect our local farmers, it would not affect our industries. And that's why we had very extensive consultations with industrialists, with farmers, and everybody. So that's why I believe it's really, really all about leadership. A leadership that is committed and patriotic will lead. Ministry of Justice and no server can only give technical and legal advice. But sometimes even when they give technical and legal advice and you have a bad political leadership, you end up in this kind of problem.
See, Honorable Minister, the question that Kingsley actually asked is apt, because if you look at our nation, historically speaking, and with respect to some gigantic projects in this country that would have turned things around for us, agreements and disagreements or arbitration or what have you, have always stalled the movement. Think of Ajakuta State Complex. The same kind of issues coming up. A state complex that would have catapulted Nigeria, above every other African nation in terms of steel production, is being stalled based on such agreements. That's number one. Railway projects. did not just start now. It started from the military regimes of perhaps Babangida, Abacha, and what have you. And this issue of agreements not well tailored, still is lingering on. And it is only this government from now that is even correcting those anomalies that has happened. And now this one that we're talking about, where Nigeria has now been threatened, in terms of our existence has been threatened financially, if you ask me. Now, like Kinsley asked you, moving forward or going forward, the current administration, of course, is faced with the myriad, of such agreements that were not properly, handled in the past. What is the way going forward in terms of tackling all of this for us to, of course, see a better future as time goes on?
I think we need more patriotic, committed leadership, political leadership. Because at the end of the day, a minister could decide to ignore all reasonable advice if it's self-centered and unpatriotic. So it again boils down to leadership. And that's why I think Nigeria is lucky that today we have a leader whose patriotism and dedication to Nigeria is not challenged even by his worst enemies, and is the beacon all ministers follow. So I think if we can establish this for the next 4 years, we would have been able to lay a solid foundation that would be impossible or difficult for any other successor to actually pull it down. So it's actually about, leadership.
In the current administration, sorry, Kinsley, in this administration, is there any limit to where a minister can take a decision that will be binding on the entire nation? Because from what you have unearthed, with concern to this 9.6 billion, it does seem that some persons, may have wielded their power.
I'm afraid that this went beyond minister. It was signed. It was signed by the highest echelon of government. This particular one. Okay. Because by the time you have this kind of sovereign. This was a contract between the federal petroleum resources and P&ID, and it had to do with our gas. I don't think it was just something that we stop at the level of the minister. No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Well, I mean, some Nigerians will also be concerned as part of the issues that you have raised, Alhaji Lai. We lost Bakassi.
Yes, leadership again.
Are we going to lose $9.6 billion to a judgment debt?
No, Kinsley, we are leaving no stone unturned. We are even ready to sit down. We are willing to also sit down with P&ID and negotiate. Why do you take this matter to the highest level? That will say both legal, diplomatic, and otherwise. Because it's not because we want to save money, but because we think it's just unfair. It is unconscionable. It's punitive. And what kind of, I'm short of words to really describe, what the country is going through now. You don't inflict this kind of injury on the country and its people for your own selfish reasons. But like I said, please, the government is doing everything possible, one, to get a safe execution, and also to, set aside this award. But of course, at the end of the day, we'll sit down with P&ID and, arrive at something that we think is reasonable for all the parties.
I'm just wondering, going back to the Bakassi, with respect to the ICJ, this judgment that Bakassi had, there was some evaluation in terms of the quality of the representation that we had in the entire process, giving advice as to what to do. What might be the disposition of the President Buhari administration to do this? On the one hand, it's kicked off a criminal investigation, bringing in the ICPC, EFCC, NIA, and Office of the IGP. Nigeria has an array of legal minds. experts in international economic law, experts in international arbitration, and other things. Will the government seek to avail itself of the services of these Nigerians as part of the patriotic duty that all Nigerians owe to ensure that we don't suffer this humongous loss that is looming?
Just like I can assure you that as we speak, federal government is already doing that, and meetings are taking place along this. I don't know, along this line. We would want to make sure that our first level is engaged in this fight to ensure that we do not lose this $9.6 billion.
All right, sir. Information management. Let me just divide a little bit. Information management is very vital in a country like ours. Where social media has pervaded, the entire, or rather occupied the entire, information space. And even the topic for this morning, which we're discussing, there are some background information on that. Some are correct, some are not correct. For some of them, you have already, told the true story, or brought up the real perspective to the issue. Now, going forward in information setting agenda, of course, the next level is where we are. So what will be the next level with respect to the information sector?
Well, we will try as much as possible to consolidate on some of the programs and projects that we embarked upon in between 2015 and 2019. Information management goes beyond television appearances, press releases. If you remember, between 2015 and 2019, we were quite resourceful, if I can say so. We organized town hall meetings. We must continue these town hall meetings. These town hall meetings provided veritable platforms for the government and the governed to exchange views on issues. And if you know the format of our town hall meetings, we'll go there with 5-6 ministers, depending on what matter was being discussed. And it was rotated from one geopolitical area to the other. We also, did this testimony series, which allowed Nigerians to actually tell people how government projects have benefited them. So we try to speak. Government try to speak through the people themselves. So it's not as if it's propaganda. We also, you remember, as a Minister of Information, we also were not, desk bound. We tried to go out with the media to see exactly what government was doing. So that it was not us really reporting, but the media was reporting what they saw. And I think we'll continue with this and other innovative ideas that will be brought up. But you see, today with social media, the challenges before any information minister all over the world, I think, is gargantuan. And I think, a few days ago, I saw that even Britain was so overwhelmed with the social media. The Parliament had to, I think they are trying to see how they could impose some kind of fines on, purveyors of fake news. So I think it's a global issue.
But is Nigeria taking that direction? Because there are many nations who have made laws, guiding the operational methodology when it comes to social media. Because because some go to jail for what they publish.
I know. You see, it depends. You see, it depends on the climate and the country. But like we are appealing to Nigerians, let the social media self-regulate. If they don't, they will self-destruct. We'll continue our campaign against fake news. We continue to enlist the support of all players, because at the end of the day, if they don't self-regulate, like it's happening in Britain today, Britain is now trying to regulate and trying to impose fine on
publications. Yes.
Publications. So, but we still continue, I think, with our own advocacy.
One of the crucial agencies under your ministry is the National Orientation Agency, which is amenable for a wide range of activities in terms of not just public information management, but in orientation itself. But the indication is that the NOA is grossly under-resourced. What can be done about this?
I've started engaging National Assembly leadership. So, in fact, up till about 7 p.m. yesterday, I was with the chairman of the Senate Committee on Information and National Orientation. And one of the issues I went to discuss with them is that we have NOA, which has presence in each of the 774 local governments of the Federation. It is the most grassroots-based organization. They give us on a regular basis very accurate social, political, security report. Unfortunately, they are underfunded, they are under-resourced, and I went to appeal, also the National Assembly, to assist us, to give teeth to this organization. And I'm going to also make the appeal to the members of the leadership of the National Assembly, because we must not allow National Orientation Agency to die. We must give it enough funding, because it's the only organization that is at a national level that you can see at the local government level. Every day I receive reports from National Orientation Agency. It speaks about even the prices of commodities, onions, palm oil, and it warns the government about likely, social eruptions. So that kind of agency must be supported. And we have a very dynamic, young man today who is at the end of the affairs, who is totally at home with that portfolio. But he needs support of everybody, especially the National Assembly and the government, in getting the necessary fund. I quite understand too that the issue, we have today is that the economy is facing challenges, but I think we must give priority to this like the NOA.
And again, reorientation is key. Yes, we may have economic difficulties, but we need that reorientation.
Clearly, you've forgotten that even before I assumed this office as minister in 2015, I was so concerned about this reorientation that we came up with an elaborate program. Change begins with me. It was launched by Mr. President, and which I must again thank the NTA for continuously airing it. I thank FRCN for doing so. We must find partnership, we must find resources, because that program, Change Begins With Me, speaks to the core of Nigerian problems today. The problem in Nigeria is not just the leadership, it's all of us.
Yeah,
if that change can begin with all of us, whether you are whether you are a lorry driver, or you are a customs officer, or you are a minister, or you are a pepper seller, and you see that change must begin with you. And so we need this reorientation, and partnership with NOA, we started this Change Begins With Me, which we are going to consolidate upon.
Kingsley, you recall in the 80s, war against indiscipline.
That's right.
That was why, and I'm happy that it's been sustained. That is the NOA we're talking about today. This is a replica of NOA we're talking about today.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So on that note, we'd like to thank you, the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you very much, Kingsley.
Okay, so that does it for our conversation segment. Let's go over now to our sports desk.